Approve said agenda.
I'd move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second,
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Agenda is approved. And we have a one item agenda for Dram Road annexation. Ryan Andrews, you have the floor, sir.
All right. Second to share here all the maps and everything, so everybody can be playing from the same sheet of music. Councilmember Cox, can you see that okay? My map?
Yes, thank you.
All right, great. So here today to provide a report and answer any questions you might have on the Dram Road annexation. We're requesting that the Utilities Committee recommend this to the full council. We do have some additional analysis that we need to do as staff, but we'll talk about that. That needs to happen prior to getting it to the full council, but we'll talk about that at the end of the presentation. So the city received a notice of intent to commence annexation proceedings filed by Threes Company LLC. This is the first step in the petition method of an annexation. We verified that the 10% valuation of the area proposed for annexation is valid. And so it starts kind of the wheels in motion regarding the annexation process. A little bit of background on the actual property here. So these three parcels that you can see on the screen are those that are within the area for the 10% petition. So they're along 15th Avenue Northeast, immediately north of Century Court. This property to the south is the school district property that's been undeveloped. Then you have Century Court, and then further to the east is the Madera Apartments, which are currently under construction. And so these three properties are in the process of being purchased by a potential developer to utilize a development proposal that's been approved in Thurston County. And as a condition of connecting to utilities, council policy is if you're adjacent to the municipal boundary, you're required to annex. So it's essentially on two sides. On the north side, there's the incorporated limits here, which is the part of Cuyo Park and the Palm Creek headwaters to the north, and then Century Court area to the south.
Just out of curiosity, see what looks like a residential lot in a string of them that
Right.
is,
Right here,
go up to, there you
Right
go,
Oh,
right
right
there.
here.
Yeah, what is that?
that's city-owned property. So the city owns that, and I don't know if we have any.
It's a platted lot, but it's a vacant lot that has access into that part. So
Okay,
Correct.
great. It's kind of obscure.
Yeah, good catch. So the purpose of the committee's review today is also to look at the boundary for the annexation. And as you can see on the map here, and maybe I'll go to the next slide, which shows a little even more, is that by enclosing, these are the properties here, by enclosing this area, it would create an island. We would basically create a municipal boundary that would run north-south through these parcels, which would in essence create an island of urban growth area to the east. In anticipating that if we did move forward with this as a petition method of annexation, that the Boundary Review Board would assert their jurisdiction and make us require us to take in this area anyways. We're proposing that we move forward with, and the council has the option to move forward with the unincorporated island method, which basically states that if the area is contiguous to residential property within the city and is at least 80% of the annexation boundary contiguous to the city limits boundary, we can move forward through this method. So you can see here, utilizing this, we've actually proposed to move the boundary a little bit further to the west, and I'll explain that here in a second. But essentially 88% of this area is enclosed by city limits boundary, which would allow us to utilize this method of annexation.
Without appeal from the neighborhood, if the neighborhood doesn't want to be annexed?
It does have a potential referendum associated with it. So when we do move this forward to council, we're required to estimate the number of voters in the area. And based on the number of voters, I can't remember right offhand, I think it's maybe 10% of the voters within the area in the last general election. If they put forward a referendum to the city, that would put it on the next election. And so then it would set forth then an election to.
So if you had a petition that included 10% of the property owners within that potential island there that would want to challenge it.
10% of the voters.
10% of the voters, correct.
Right, but to start the petition for annexation is 10% of the ownership of value.
Oh, okay, so
That's what
plain,
we're hearing out today.
plain devil's advocate, let's say you have a neighborhood that overwhelmingly does not want to be annexed. What is their recourse?
Through the referendum.
Same method.
Yeah.
So 10% of,
Well, there's two processes. There's the
Okay.
petition method, which is a separate process. Then there's the unincorporated island method that Brian's talking about, which we can initiate, which would be subject to the referendum vote. There's two different processes there.
okay,
With the petition method, it would be subject to a public hearing where the public can show up and talk about what their concerns are.
Okay. All right, so the area proposed for annexation is located in the Pleasant Glade planning area. So with this, what we're proposing is essentially the boundary would come straight up the western boundary of Judd Street Northeast. Judd Street is essentially a 1 or 2 lanes, a small road that dead ends to the north here. The reason for bringing it all the way to Judd Street is that there is another development proposal on this property right here, which would be annexed as well. It's a single family subdivision. So in total, this would bring the potential annexation to 210 acres containing 189 tax parcels for a total assessed value of about $56 million for the area to be annexed. Property does have a wide variety. I'm gonna go that way, the wide variety of zoning, most of which is single family residential. That's kind of the light cream color is a low density residential designation. The lighter tan is moderate density, and then this bright orange is high density residential. It as well contains our only area of agriculture zoning in this area of the urban growth area. There are a couple others in the eastern area, kind of around Marvin Road, but this is the only area of agriculture zoning. It's off Carpenter Road. This is the old Blueberry Farm property, if you're familiar with that, kind of a little bit south and east of Cuyo Park. So it would go all the way from essentially the Gateway development on the east side, all the way to Judd Street on the west. A couple important sensitive areas to recognize here. One is Woodland Creek does run through kind of this portion here down and through a culvert down Durham Street. I'll talk about the kind of culvert situation here in a little bit. And then Eagle Creek comes off of basically from the north and comes down this direction and is in a culvert that's across Carpenter. You can see those, here's the streams located on the aerial photo here. Woodland Creek coming across I-5 and then down towards Puget Sound, Eagle Creek coming out of the north, connecting up into Woodland Creek, and then eventually out to Puget Sound as well. So as I mentioned, there's actually 2 properties in here that have valid land use approval. One is the proposed Williams Crossing, which is a 216 unit multifamily development. That's the one that actually started the petition. And then there is a 69 unit single family residential subdivision to the west of that. So that's called Ventura Crossing, which is located right here. Upon annexation, the land use approvals would be transferred to the city and final design permits and construction would occur in the city. A little bit more here on the aerial. You can see that most of it is relatively undeveloped, fairly rural. There is the Woodland Creek Estate subdivision that runs adjacent to Woodland Creek here, but most of it is larger lot, single family residential. Talk a little bit about the utilities. This here on the map here is shown the existing water lines. So there is kind of water mains that run down 15th, down Dram. So that it's well served with water in that area. We do have water in the Woodland Creek Estates subdivision here as well. There is very limited water in Carpenter Road, so
We're servicing Woodland Creek development with city water.
correct.
Okay.
And there is one private, I'll mention one private water system in this whole annexation area. Pretty much all of it is within the Lacey Water Service area, except for one area, which is this Covington 212 Water Service area. The very northern portion of Woodland Creek Estates up here. So you'll notice that like the water lines kind of terminate here. This is actually a private water system right up in here.
Interesting.
Not exactly sure the history of that, but
It's PUD, it was private, and then their well, when the arsenic standards went down, their well had arsenic too expensive to treat. They said, who's gonna help us? PUD stepped in, but PUD didn't want to put money into getting them a new well or treatment system. So we provide water through a master meter water supply agreement with the PUD.
Yeah.
That's how they get water.
Oh, wow.
and then this is sewer. So sewer is very limited in this area. You can see most of it is supplying Woodland Creek Estates. This is a step system that was installed by the city probably about 10 years ago to protect the water quality associated with Woodland Creek. We had a number of failing septic systems in that area. So the city did a capital project to put in new sewer lines here,
It was about 10 years ago.
give or take. There will be a new, with the apartments on the south side here, a new pump station installed, new lift station, which will help serve the future development of this portion of 15th. Just wanted to make a note that, you know, with the kind of the limitation on the utilities, and what we talked to our utilities folks about is that they said, hey, our utilities can generally serve this area, but if we do any kind of significant rezoning, especially any significant upzoning, our utilities aren't really sized to handle a lot of additional development in this area. So we do have a little bit of capacity issues associated with the infrastructure in the area. Let's see. Couple other things that I wanted to bring up before I pass over to you for any questions. I wanted to make mention that there was information in your staff report about the number of annexations that we've done in the recent past. So we've added approximately 1,500 acres to the city, about 2.4 square miles since 2015. As well as almost 3,000 additional residents. And we need to keep that in mind when we're developing the information for how this affects things like our police services, public works, and those kinds of things, because it does put additional demand on staff. And our previous annexations, we haven't directly added any staff as a result of. So it's just something to keep in mind. As well, for this annexation, even though it does have a $56 million assessed value, the portion that comes to the city in terms of property tax, which would be our main revenue generator for this annexation, would be approximately $38,000 per year. So it's not a large, assessed or tax generating area that, we would benefit from. We would basically be able to take on some additional utility tax associated with that. So round numbers, about $50,000 potentially to the city as a result of the annexation. So it doesn't bring with it a lot of revenue. We did route this to several internal city departments to get their comments on kind of potential impacts to their service. We did receive comments from the police department. They said the call for demand here for service is pretty low, fairly quiet in terms of the police service area. That they did mention that they were concerned with some of the connectivity with the streets in the area. They see that, and we'll talk about this a little bit, is the streets are not very well connected, that it's a lot of dead end roads and those kinds of things. But they are already out in that area generally, between calls and those kinds of things. So
Brian, going back to the revenue that you mentioned, are you also including the proposed, there's a plan in the works to build multifamily here, correct?
that does not assume any additional revenue. So any additional revenue associated with the building permits or the
Okay.
assessed value would be in addition.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we have any idea what that might entail?
Not offhand, we can certainly run some estimates, but just a curious
Well,
question.
One of
The one parcel 68 single family, right?
And one of the things too is as this, if this goes forward to council, we want to put together a full packet of a little bit more detailed analysis of both the service costs as well as the future revenue.
The other comments were received by Public Works, which had comments related to transportation infrastructure needed in the area. I think it's well known to just about anybody that's driven that stretch of 15th and Dram and Carpenter that, these are kind of old county roads, not built to any city standards. And so the future full build out of those would be a 4 or 5 lane section arterial. So it would be a full, arterial with bike lanes and planter strips and sidewalks and all those kind of things
That's
to go
gonna
with
be a
it.
huge undertaking too.
It would be, and quite costly. There's some estimates in your packet related to that. The pavement condition in the area is relatively good. There are a couple areas that would need to be repaved within the next year, 2-3 years on Dram at 15th. There's a report that it was provided in your packets that talked about the culvert crossing at Woodland Creek, which is in need of replacement and would be associated with any future road project in that area. And would have some costs associated with that as well. Additionally, some information provided on stormwater. So the main concern here is the Eagle Creek crossing at Carpenter Road. So there's information in your packet there showing the condition of that. Essentially, they're using some makeshift grates at this point for keeping debris out. So there needs to be some vegetation removal and an actual kind of debris grate constructed there to make sure that retains or doesn't retain water, that the water can flow through that. So we need to provide some more background and information on that. Lacey Fire District 3 serves just about everything except for, we'll go back to the map here. There are a couple parcels, I think maybe it's these parcels here where the South Bay Fire District serves those areas, which is somewhat unique in that we have essentially all of this is within Fire District 3. It basically creates an island of Fire District 8 here. So an annexation would essentially take care of that because it would annex that area into Fire District 3. So I know you probably have a lot of questions. I just
What
want
would be
to.
our closest fire department, the one on Willamette?
And it actually, when we went through the Cuyo Park annexation, that same issue popped up and it actually helps with logistics because Lacey Fire District does respond to that area usually quite a bit. The logistics of the South Bay.
So here's this last slide, just kind of where we're at on the annexation and some of the things that we need to do before bringing this to the full council. Obviously, we're recommending that the city council or the utilities committee move forward with the proposal as a unincorporated island method. But in developing a lot of this information, we got a lot more questions that we need to answer prior to getting to the full council. So number one is coordination with Thurston County. We need to reach out to our partners at the county to see where they're at on the annexation. Specifically, I don't move this so we can all see it. Identifying traffic impact fees collected for the area. So this is 15th and Dram has been a project that's been on our plans for a long time. The Thurston County has been collecting traffic mitigation fees for this area. So we need to talk to the county and see what is available to help offset the costs and see if that can be transferred to the city. A better idea of the timing of transportation improvements. So again, this is related to 15th and Dram mostly, is that that has a big price tag associated with it. So we need to talk to our public works department a little bit more and look at what, if we were to add this project to our tip, what would that look like in terms of timing for transportation improvements, and especially related to some of the work at the Woodland Creek culvert. Identify the stormwater maintenance costs, especially for the culvert maintenance at Eagle Creek. So find out exactly what the level of cost is associated with that culvert on Carpenter Road. And then getting back to part of the information that we provided, which is the general staffing concerns, the impacts to, what in serving this area, if we're adding additional demand, what that would be and whether or not we need to add any employees as a result. thing I did want to mention is we do have the applicant here that submitted the initial petition. So we have Ryan Coleman, right, here that can speak on the behalf of the potential ownership there, the applicant for submitting this. So state law actually says at this point, this is when the applicants can speak towards the council on the application. So this is their opportunity to provide feedback. And then finally, we're recommending to forward this to the full council for consideration and action after we develop some additional information. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions or turn over to Ryan to provide any comments.
Yeah, let's go ahead and, Ryan, go ahead and any feedback that you'd like to offer us, or?
Not much really. I think Mr. Andrews covered the whole lot of it. I mean, Ryan Colpin, Sage Homes Northwest, we are the contract purchaser for the property, and we've been working with the owners there. They knew that this was going to be an action that would have to occur if they were going to develop their property. But as I mentioned, we've got it under contract now, and we move forward with the multifamily project there, and understood that this was going to be a necessary action, and started working with staff a little over a month ago to put this forward.
Great.
Sweet.
Yeah, happy to answer any other questions you might have for
Only a month, so it sounds like the ball's rolling pretty good.
so far.
Nice.
Carolyn, do you have any questions for Ryan?
Excuse me, just one. Ryan, in that property that's just to the, looks like west of the property that he's concerned with here, how far along is that development in the permitting process?
Yeah, so that is a single family subdivision. That's the Ventura Crossing property. It has a preliminary plat approval from Thurston County. I believe they are 3 to 4 years in terms of the approval. So they would only maybe have a couple years left on their approved land use approval. The understanding that I have is that they would like to move forward with that relatively quickly if it was to be annexed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is there, Steven, did you have another question, or?
No, I would make a motion to move to the full council the proposed Durham Road annexation proposal utilizing the unincorporated island method.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, passes unanimously, and this will go to the full council for consideration.
Look forward to learning more.
Okay,
Good job, Ryan.
I believe that is it. Any other questions for the good of the order? Okay, then I call this meeting adjourned. Thanks everyone for being here. Thanks for all the information.